So I was at Walgreens the other day and I was getting my prescription, whatever, medications, whatever you want to call them. And, there's like two spots at the register. So basically, two people can be helped at the same time. And I'm in a rush. I'm, doing it before work because I'm just not great at time management. And this older gentleman is getting his prescriptions and he's kind of standing like in the middle of the two. And I think that's fine, whatever. He's kind of in the way, but the other guy, the second stand, calls me over. I walk up, um, and I tell him my name, whatever, all the normal stuff. And he goes to get my prescriptions and they can't find them. So then, like, all three of the people that are working at this Walgreens pharmacy are just like running around. You clicked on this video saying, hey, this is probably about basketball. And I'm getting there. Just give me a second. Basically, they finally find the pills. But before they do that, the old man next to me, looks at me and he goes, can't you see they're helping me? And then he goes like this, like, get, like, back to the line. And I'm like, they're helping me here too. And obviously I got my prescriptions and that wasn't the point of it. And you say, what was the point of it? And I'm getting there. It's the point of that is that sometimes, no matter how old or young you are, you have no idea what's going on, right? That old man, no idea what's going on. He wasn't aware that I was also had a right to be right next to him. And he wasn't aware that he was in the way, right? He had no idea what he was doing. And that's perfectly fine. But there's times like this. That's the thing. You have no idea what's going on. And there's your segue into the Detroit Pistons. What is going on? They're now at 27 straight losses on the season, which is ridiculous. League record. So, hey, I mean, they made history in the worst way possible, whatever. But the reason that this is important is because this is a team that has been at the bottom of the standings for the last few seasons. And they have not only acquired a ton of promising young talent, but they also got Monty Williams this year as a coach to coach their team, who was just on the Suns. Great, great coach. I know that he's having like a rough time with this team and they're struggling to find some sort of identity, but they started out 2-1 on the season and we were like, ooh, could Detroit maybe be like a fun little eighth seed? Like maybe they'll jump the standings a little bit. And now they've lost 27 straight games. That is ridiculous. That is a ridiculous amount of games to lose. And the players look defeated. The coach looks defeated. Everybody, I mean, honestly, if you lose 27 straight times in a row, you're going to be a little like, what are we doing wrong? And even Cade said it in that interview, it's like, yeah, we're bad, but we're not, you know, 2-26 bad. And he's right. No team in the NBA is actually that bad. It's very similar to the situation with the Charlotte Bobcats, although I think that was the lockout season. I'm not totally sure, but their record was 7-59. So they didn't play the full like 82 game stretch. So I don't remember why. It's got to be the lockout. Anyway, the point is that even that team had some young talent. Like they had Kemba Walker, and then obviously you know what Kemba Walker goes on to do. Tons of points. He's a great scorer. Then he goes to the Celtics, gets injured, has injuries the rest of his career, and now he's playing overseas. So I guess not, the metaphor we want to use for this Pistons team. But the point is that clearly they have talent that is good enough to win in the NBA. It's not like they're tanking, right? Like this was worse than last year, and they might have been tanking for Wembanyama, right? So what's the deal? And I think the issue, and this is all up to speculation because again, theme of the video, we don't know, right? It could be a lot of things. I think Monty's had a lot of trouble with like setting the rotation just in, okay, well, does Jaden Ivey work with Cade? It makes sense for Jaden Ivey to come off the bench in theory because, he needs the ball in his hands and so does Cade, but so does Asar a little bit. And it just feels like the Pistons have too many playmakers and not enough like other archetype of player. The team is not assembled to win and they're not assembled to lose. They're just the product of what happens when you take the best player available over and over and over and over and over again at the bottom of the draft. You have a ton of guys, but they're not exactly guys that are built to win as a team, right? You have a ton of ball handlers, a lot of guys that can create shots, not a lot of guys that can actually just become pure scorers. Cade has obviously had a good season. Efficiency is questionable, but I really think that if he started just getting calls, like if the referees just said, oh, this is a really good basketball player and we should get him to the line, he would obviously improve efficiency wise. And I also think, again, if you do the Luka LeBron like team creation where you have just a bunch of shooters, that is going to allow him to be the guy. Like Cade is the guy. Like he needs to be the guy. And you can find guys that can fit around that, like how the Celtics got Kristaps Porzingis. Like you can find guys that are good off ball, catch and shoot. Maybe Caden can find them and they can catch and drive. Like players like that, you need a guy who's not a primary ball handler, and you need to consolidate talent. Those are the two things that I think the Pistons need to do. How do you do that? Maybe you go and, trade for Lauri Markkanen. I think that might be what Detroit has to do, unfortunately. I saw something like Miles Bridges. That wouldn't be bad. Obviously I hate that guy, but what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Like, you need talent, and you need the type of talent that those long score first, not really passing wings all give you. And you have to give up the talent that's required. If you can keep Cade and Asar, I think that's what the move is. Jaden Ivey feels like the odd man out there, unfortunately, right? Because he's a great player. But he's already kind of frustrated with the team. Killian's getting minutes over him. And that's the thing with Killian, too, is like the shot's never going to come around realistically. Like he's always going to be a streaky shooter. Not that he can't hit shots. It's just like he is never going to be the player that you needed him to develop into to play beside Cade Cunningham. The Jazz are trying to continue to accumulate assets, and Lauri Markkanen doesn't really fit with what their rebuild is right now. So if you can ship Lauri over to Detroit, I don't know what that package would look like. Probably something like Jaden Ivey, Isaiah Stewart, and the big thing that's really frustrating with the Pistons is they have a pick. I think it was a lottery protected like a while ago that still hasn't conveyed. So they can't trade any of their first round picks until that pick conveys. I think it's to Houston. I'm not really sure. But they can't trade it first, because if they, you know what I mean, like don't convey this year, then the next year's pick is the one that's going to have to convey, and so on and so on and so on. So you can't get rid of any picks until that pick conveys out. And that's actually a weird thing with protections that, this team is still owed a first in whatever trade that was. I really got to do some research before I record these videos, but you know what? Here we are. You're getting to a point where the players are morally just defeated. Like they just are so disgruntled with losing that they just like, this is bad for players' confidence to lose this often, like to be this big. And again, they have had some serious culture building. Like when they had Dwayne Casey as their coach, I remember in the 22, maybe not the finals, I think it was the finals, but it was definitely during the playoffs. The Pistons actually went to a lot of the playoff games, especially some of the Celtics games, to just like be in that atmosphere. So it's like when you see stuff like that happen, you have to like feel that the team is going to take a leap at some point. And only so many teams can take leaps, and there's always going to be bottom feeders in the league. And at the end of the day, like you're never going to be able to take that leap until you get enough like of a cohesive roster, and the Pistons just don't blend or mesh together well. And that's the problem with the NBA. It's like you can have a lot of talent, but if you put a lot of guys who need the ball and can't really like play off the ball, don't really like, their skill sets just don't mesh, you're going to run into these issues. And it's not to say that like dominant players can't play together. Like LeBron could play with KD. The notion that they couldn't is ridiculous, right? But if you want to couple like a LaMelo Ball with a Trey Young, I think you'd run into some issues there. You see what I'm saying? Like the type of player that needs the ball very often is that Cade Cunningham and Luka Doncic type, right? So Kyrie can play off the ball, and that's why he's good next to Luka. But Cade and Jaden Ivey are neither, great off the ball players, and Jaden Ivey is not a spot up 3-point shooter. He's just not. So you have to ship him, unfortunately, so that he can, because the thing is that Jaden Ivey is talented and every roster in the NBA could use him, but there's teams like the Jazz that could really use that like playmaker, like that top tier guy. Like I'm serious. If the Pistons can go in and get Lauri Markkanen at the deadline, and you got to put all your chips on the table. And I know that feels like counterintuitive because they suck, but I really don't think that there's anything that stops this team from like winning a bunch of games after they, trade for Lauri Markkanen. Because Monty Williams is a good coach. Like I know that he's going to get blamed for this because it is like his roster and it is his job to like get these players to work. But again, Sar Thompson is not a spot up 3-point shooter. He can develop into that, but he is out of the three of those guys the like best option to be in the corner spotting up for three. And again, you can do it a little bit, but at the end of the day, that's not what Jaden Ivey is supposed to be doing. And so if you can get that, that's what I want them to do. If I'm the Pistons, I'm going all in. I'm giving up everything I can give to get Lauri Markkanen. And if you can't get him, yeah, maybe like Miles Bridges or Kyle Kuzma or somebody. But I just don't feel comfortable shipping out Jaden Ivey for either of those two guys. I feel like Laurie is a lot better, especially of a good, proven veteran star to pair with Cade Cunningham. I feel like it's a little bit better. I think that it would be okay if you just got Lauri Markkanen. I think that's a big enough splash to put the roster in a better spot, and the talent is consolidated. It's a little bit, better cohesively, but that's the issue, right? Is you don't have talent that works together. And, you know, let's hope that Detroit can make the right move because it is not looking good right now.